Welcome to the Art Lady channel. Today we're going to be doing a collage, and I'm just using the AccuCut pre-cut shapes, but if you're at home and don't have this, you can go ahead and cut these out yourself with scissors, or you can just tear them with paper, and I'll show you that as we go along. So the first step is to create some sand, and for the sand you can use scrapbook paper, you can use, I have small pieces like this cut right here. And what I had my students do is just tear it down the middle, like so. And when you tear it, just go slow, and then you get this beautiful deckled edge, it's called. It's kind of a rough, textured edge. I go real slow, and that's gonna make some gorgeous sand that we can glue down here. Now, you can also use magazines for collaging. And artists have been collaging for hundreds of years using cut-up pieces of magazine or torn pieces of magazine. So for this example, I'm just going to use some of this gorgeous magazine. So I'm going to go ahead and just tear this down the middle. And now I have great colors for my sand. So for gluing, what we do is we flip it over to the other side, and my students are using a glue stick. And this is a collage with me, so you can go ahead and begin with me. When we use the glue stick, we never open this up. If you look here, I can see some purple coming out of this tube. So I don't need to twist this up really high. I just need to draw one line and draw another line near the edges. I didn't even go on the edges. It's a little hard to see here. But we just go near the edge, and then we're going to flip it over and put it down on our paper. My students have really long paper, so they're gluing two pieces. So we glue one on one edge, one on the other, or you can center it right in the middle. So that's our beautiful sand. The next thing we're going to work on is using a smaller piece of paper, and we're going to be working on some coral. And again, if you want to just use gorgeous magazine pieces, you can, because I found some really cool magazine. Look at this, all these red colors. So I can make some red coral. And when artists collage, when they're using magazines, they don't look at, this is a pillow. We're not looking at it as a picture, or we're not looking at it as, this is grass and fields. We just look at it as color. So if you're collaging with newspapers or magazines, just look at the color. If it's the right color for you, then you can transform this into whatever you want. And I'm going to be making a coral reef. So my students have a square about that big. And so what we're going to do first with our square is just tear off a corner of it, like so. And then we can tear off a little bit of this side. We just want to make kind of a little mound for representing a coral reef. And I'm just going to tear the bottom here as well. So on one side of our paper, we're going to glue the coral reef. Again, I just put two little lines. I could do one on each side since it's triangular shape. And I'm going to place my coral reef on this side. Now what I'm going to do is make some small lines of coral, just kind of growing. It's almost going to look like trees. So I'm just going to tear down and make some strips of paper. If you notice, it's about the thickness of my finger or a little bit wider. And then I go ahead and add my glue, and I'm going to have my coral branch to one side and maybe branch to this side. And that's with our smaller piece of papers we're doing this. You can even tuck it underneath. Oh, mine's glued down a bit. Just to represent some coral. Now, the coral is a living creature. And it has, this part of the coral, however, is the skeleton of the coral, the dead part of the coral, the rock part. It almost forms a rock. But coming off of the coral is living creatures. So if we take our markers now we can draw in some living creatures. An artist, so to draw in the living creatures, I'm kind of just putting a stem coming out. Just a little line, and I'm going to put it around my coral. So the living creatures in the coral, they are almost like, some of them have almost like jellyfish tentacles. And these creatures are called coral polyps. They're on the face of it too, but mine doesn't seem to work well. I'm not using a permanent marker. So these living little corals, they kind of look like mini jellyfish. And they have like lots of little tentacles or arms coming out of it that flow in the water. And the coral reefs are very delicate. Sometimes these fish come and will eat some of this. But they're very sharp. Certain areas are very sharp on coral too. If you're ever swimming and bump up against a coral reef, sometimes it can cut your foot. But this is a very delicate type of a habitat. And if you're ever swimming on a coral reef, you're not supposed to break it off and take live coral. So we're adding these little wavy tentacle lines for the living polyps of the coral all along the coral. So there we have our beautiful coral in our undersea coral reef. And lots of little fish live in and around the coral. It's a great undersea habitat because the coral protects these baby fish and little fish. They're mostly found in tropical waters. So you've got gorgeous fish everywhere. The next step, what we're going to do is we're going to do some seaweed. And we're going to make, you can make it long, tall. I had some kids just do little groupings of it, whatever you want. Again, you can use magazine, which I'm going to use, or you can just use green paper. Now look, I've got writing on my magazine here, and I think that's absolutely gorgeous. It gives nice texture and extra color and dimension to this. So again, we're not looking at it as, that's words. Why do we put words in our picture? Hundreds of years ago when George Braque and Pablo Picasso collaged, they collaged newspapers and words. So we can do that as an artist. Now to do seaweed, we're just gonna go gently, and I'm gonna tear little strips, skinny strips. Now, I'm gonna give you a secret. If you're tearing something and it doesn't tear very well, like this seems to not tear that great, try it in the other direction. So if something doesn't work one way, it may work the other way. And what it's called is you're tearing it with the grain of the fibers. And that's why one way works a little bit better than the other. It's how this paper is actually made. So I've got long skinny strips here that are great for seaweed. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to apply some glue on the back again, and then flip it over. And I'm going to do some long seaweed. You want to vary it. You don't want it all real short. You want long, put some over here, some long and some short. And don't have it just go in straight rows. Have your seaweed tip different ways, because remember, under the water, if you've ever felt when you go swimming the water, if you move your hand like this, the currents of the water you can feel. And the plants are very light and delicate, and they move with the currents. So to create movement in our picture, I can have the seaweed tilting one way like this to show a water is flowing, the water flow. You can even hold it like this and glue it if that's easier for you. I see some students doing that. So this is flowing in the currents of the water. I'm going to get some down here. Now if you notice, this didn't quite fill in, did it? But I didn't worry about that because I can always cover it up later with something else. And don't worry about your boundaries. You can go beyond here. Here's a real small one I'll stick down here. And overlap and layer this to create some real interesting design patterns with your seaweed. And again, it's creating some real nice movement. I'm going to put some in tall, right in here. And I'm going to make sure I get my edges down though. There. So now I have some gorgeous seaweed. We've got some sand and our coral. And now we're going to work on the mermaid. And for my students, we're using pre-cut shapes that I purchased. I purchased what's called a die from AccuCut. That's the mermaid die. And she has a tail that is, one is sitting down, one is standing straight, and I believe there's one other one that's flipped. Here's one that has a tail that flips up. And these are great. They don't take much time to cut out. But if you don't have an AccuCut die like that, you can go ahead and cut out your own. And so I'm just going to show you really quickly. The head is a circle or an oval. So you'll cut out an oval. The arms are just long, skinny pieces with a bent hand. But if you're doing this at home, I would just do a long, skinny piece. So I would take my paper like this, I would just cut down, I would cut it in half, and you've got two arms if you want to make it very simple. If you want to get a little fancy, just round the ends like that, like so. And that's a simple arm for your mermaid. Then you want to do a fancy body piece, and I'll show you what the AccuCut punch looks like. This is the torso, and a torso is from your neck down to your waist. This section is a torso. To make your torso at home, if you're at home, I simply cut, now this was the 8.5 by 11 piece that was cut in half. I just simply take that 8.5 by 11 piece, I cut a hunk off that, and the torso is, if you look at the shape, it's rectangular. So we're going to cut a rectangular piece. See that? If you want to get it a little fancy, round your edges and cut a waist. I'm going to go down and up. Just a little notch here and you've got a waist. So there's your torso for your mermaid. The next thing we're going to do is the mermaid tail. And so you want to take a real pretty piece. So you'll need a mermaid tail. And so you want to get some kind of a paper that has some texture to it or pattern. These are great. Magazine, if you look in magazines, or you can use scrapbook paper. And basically I take a scrap of scrapbook paper. You want it bigger than your torso. And you're going to round, so you start with your rectangle, just round the corners. Here. And again, this is if you're at home. And then this will be the top where it meets my torso. Now I'm just going to come down and back right in here. So I'll draw it for you. If you want to draw it first, you can. So you match it up to your torso because you don't want something skinnier than your torso. And I'm just going to come down and around for my tail. This will be cut off and then I can add the tail opening. So I come down and around. It's almost like a backwards J. And then I just simply take some scraps and I'm going to cut two long skinny rectangles. And then I'm going to point them. One, turn it up, point them. So look what we've got here. It looks like a really tall mountain. I got two of them. And then we'll attach them together. So I've got my J. I've got one on this side, one on this side. Now you can always adjust right in here if you need to cut them smaller. Point. I round the bottom. So now it looks like a little teardrop. And then when I glue this together, I position my mermaid and I add my tail. Now I am going to trim this off because I don't want this black line showing here. So I'm going to come back in and do that. I'll make her a little bit shorter. And then I've got my mermaid tail. And then we can do the torso. And look, if you need to adjust, I'm going to cut this a little bit thinner. And then we're going to do the arms. And then you do your head, which is an oval. Just like so. Now I'm just going to build this together. And what I do is I start with my torso. Remember, you want to plan it for your head. So you don't want to put your torso too far up. So I'm going to put her here. And so my torso's great in the middle. I'm just going to apply it right here with some glue. And then I'm going to stick my head right here. And for the head, I cut an oval out. And then I added a little bit of a neck connecting to my oval. If you didn't do that, you can always just use a scrap piece of paper like so and make a neck out of it. So there's my head with my torso. And if you want to make this simple, this could be just a rectangle shape too. You don't have to cut in. Then I'm going to apply the glue. And again, look at the glue, how much glue I put on. Very little glue. Flip it over. Apply that. Then I'm going to add my tail. Putting a little bit of glue on the tail. Attach this. And for the arms, they go up here where the shoulders are. Okay, we don't want to put our arms down low, right at the shoulder, the top. So I add my glue. Come to your shoulder. And if you want to bend it, you can bend it like this. I've just bent mine. To bend, I just fold it this way. And then this one will be straight, maybe straight down. Add your glue. Again, you don't need a lot of glue. I'm tucking it in under my shoulder here. Like so. Now the fun part, we get to decorate. We can put a little top on her. Here's some tops from AccuCut that were punched out. And this, I think, was an AccuCut top as well. If you're going to do a merman, here's the merman, just swimming, the king of the sea, or King Neptune. We're going to go ahead, and for the top, we can draw in a top, simply just by drawing a V and coming over. We can add a little bathing suit top and color that in, or we can tear paper to make a top. That's fun too. Now, for the hair, we can draw in hair. Let's just draw it in so it's quick. We're going to come down from the top, or you can collage it in black paper, which is just torn paper like this. Or actually any color paper. If you want to have green hair, that's cool because she's kind of like a mermaid in the sea with seaweed hair. That would look fun too. I'm just going to draw it in if you want to draw it in with me. I'm just doing lines coming down for her bangs. And then I'm going to flow it in the water. So I'm having it come out with some waves. And this is creating more motion in our picture. And then of course we can color this in. And for the face, I just do very simple faces. Kids sometimes have trouble with the face. Notice it's just a simple line. We don't need a lot of detail, so even just a straight line down for the nose and over like the letter L. A line for the eyes, and if you want to add a little bit of a circle for the eyes, you can. Her lips or mouth can just come over, simple like this, or you can add a double line. The top one's a little bit longer than the small bottom one. You could even draw in this with an orange marker, would look great too. If you draw it in with orange, it'll just give some facial features like the nose. Whoops, that's a little big. And my lips, I can draw in like that. And then your eyes, you might even want to use a, you know, put your, something like this. So you can use colors as well. That's up to you. And then the hair you can give, actually I might even give a little bit of, have a seaweed feel to the hair just with marker. Like so. And then maybe some tan for highlights. If I can get a light brown or tan. Sometimes it's hard showing on this darker paper. But here I have that. And then of course you can color in her top any way you want to. Or if you've collaged the top with scraps of paper, that'll look nice too. I'm gonna match actually my top right here just with some torn paper to finish it. And I'll show you what that looks like after I have it glued down. Now the fun part, you can add whatever you want to this. Draw in little fishies. You could put in seashells she's holding. Use your imagination. You can even put a little cave or cave in the back here. So whatever you want to do, you can add little waves of water. And I do my waves horizontally across the page, like so. And I layer it with color. Let's see if I can get some light blue waves in here. Again, this is the current under the sea. We have a nice little current going. And I'm going to go ahead and show you what my kids made today. And I hope you enjoyed this collage with me.